So the last stage in our GR Corolla build that we're doing is we're going to install one of the new VR Tuned ECU tuning box. This is a plug-and-play device. Got the harness right here. This goes into 4 different sensors. Includes the boost pressure, manifold pressure, mass airflow sensor, as well as the camshaft sensor. It gets all the readings, puts it back into the box, and this is what takes over and delivers the power improvements. This is a Bluetooth box, so we can control the settings on our phone. And so yeah, we're gonna get this thing installed, and once we finish that, we'll dyno it and see what it does. So let's get to it. All right, the first step to doing the install is you gotta take the engine cover off. Once we have the engine cover off, we can now access all of the harness clips that we need to. Again, we got 4 different harnesses to touch, and we gotta start unplugging those. And these will match up directly, so it'll be a pretty easy thing to do. All right, the first harness that we're going to tap into is going to be the manifold pressure sensor, and that's located right here. So we just take this off. Going to go ahead and plug that directly into the new harness. It only fits in there one way. And now this one's done. It's time to move on to the next plug. Our turbo pressure sensor is located right here off of the intercooler charge pipe. Just got to unplug this one. Simple, and we'll go ahead and splice that one in place with just our plugging our clips in here. So this one plugs into this source. And now this goes into the intercooler pipe onto the sensor, and that's clipped in. And once we get all this plugged in, then we can route all the cables really nice so it fits in there and out of the way. This final sensor is for the mass airflow sensor, and this is directly on the intake pipes. This one's going to be really easy to access. Unplug, replug, and then we're done with plugging in the sensors. All right, we got the tuning box plugged in, ready to go, but first we're going to download the app so we can control it and get it set to where we need. So I got the Tuning Pro app pulled up here per our instructions. Go ahead and get that, give it a little Face ID. And once that's downloaded, following the rest of the instructions on the page, once we open the app, it'll just ask to scan this QR code on the back. There we go. Serial number, registering the tuning box. And once that validates, then we're ready to connect it. The app is now connected. We have our different modes, race, sport, eco, and of course we can set them into different numbers based upon the sensitivity of the tuning box, which really is designed for higher or lower octane. So now it's time to start the car up, make sure everything's good, and we'll do some dyno runs. All right, that was our first run with the VR Tuned tuning box. Looks like we got about a peak horsepower, around 286 and about 286 foot-pounds of torque as well. So we'll do 2 more runs to see what it does. Obviously, sometimes there's adjustments and learning, and then we can plot it on the graph and we can see what our gains are. So let's do run number 2. Here's run 3. So we just finished doing the 3 runs on the dyno with the tuning box, and of course this 3-cylinder engine, it's going to start doing some heat soak. So Our first run is probably going to be our best run. Let's see what this compares to doing it with its stock and with the exhaust to see how much power we gain. So I have our 3 runs plotted up here, the same 2 that we compared with just the exhaust and stock, and now I've added the VR tuned run. Let's check them out up here. The solid line is with the tuning box. You've got red, which is horsepower, and blue, which is torque. Before, we had the middle line here, closer together dots. This was with the exhaust, and then the baseline, the furthest part of the exhaust. Remember before, just with the exhaust, we gained about 258 to 274. So we gained some good power right there. It's 15 horsepower. Throughout the RPM range, we picked up about 15 to 17 horsepower. Now with the tuning box, you can see we have a gain throughout the entire power range. Down here where the turbo starts spooling up, let's take a look here. We've got 188 horsepower at 4,000 RPMs. Straight up, that goes to 214. That is just about a 30 horsepower gain. If I want to take this even further up to right where it's hitting its peak horsepower at the very top, we've got about 282. And that's all wheel horsepower on 91 octane in a Mustang dyno. That's doing very well. Straight down, we've got 264. So we got about a 20 horsepower gain over the exhaust system only. Let's take a look at torque. Peak torque 281. Drop that straight down to 246, about 40 foot-pounds of gain. We want to talk about the overall gain from the car being stock to the addition of the tuning box and the exhaust. Let's take a look here. 5,600 RPMs. We see 247 all-wheel horsepower, and we take that straight up here. We've got 282 horsepower. That's a combined amount of over 40 horsepower to the wheels. And again, with torque, we see about 40 foot-pounds of torque. You might be thinking, well, you should see more with a tune. And the fact is that these little 3-cylinder engines, they really don't gain a huge amount of power with just a tune. So doing your mods like an intake, an intercooler, an exhaust system, they all cumulatively add up to really improve the overall performance. At the end of the day, to see a 40 horsepower gain on this 3-cylinder engine is a huge improvement over stock. So we've got our first test drive here. Now we've got the exhaust on, the VR tuned in, and we're pushing about 350 horsepower to the crank. Translates again about 280 at the wheels. So let's give her a rip and see how fun this thing is. That is not bad for a 3-cylinder. This thing really goes. There's almost no turbo lag. It's instant, so that torque you real feel. I mean, it's spooling right there around 2,700 RPM, so you're getting a lot more on the low end. And as you saw by the dyno, this thing just wants to pull and pull all the way to our red line test on the dyno, which was about 6,800 RPMs. And the exhaust sounds great. It's a very smooth tone. Doesn't sound like a ugly boxer engine or a raspy BMW. It's got a good clean sound from it. Yeah, I like that. I like that. I think it feels really good. I don't mind an exhaust system that, you know, has a little bit of drone per se. I mean, I wouldn't call it drone, but has that tone that's ongoing because I want to hear the exhaust. So I think it sounds good. We're at about 4th gear, around 2,500 RPMs, 40 miles an hour. And it's a clean sound. It's really not too over intensified to your brain. It's a good sound. And then when you drop it and you downshift, it just sounds great.